Here are a couple more stories from my father, stories that have stuck with me for years and made me think twice about the places we take for granted. My father grew up in a small town surrounded by farmland and woods. On the edge of town was a field everyone called the Old Battlefield. Most avoided it, especially after sunset. The adults said it was just a name, but kids whispered that something terrible had happened there long ago, a battle no one wanted to remember. One autumn, my father and his cousin Sam were out hunting rabbits. As the sun set, a thick mist crept in. They lost track of time and wandered into the old battlefield. The air felt heavy and cold, and the usual sounds of the forest disappeared. They decided to cut across the field to get home faster. My father noticed strange mounds in the ground, like old graves or trenches, half hidden by tall grass. Sam kept glancing over his shoulder, like he expected someone to be following them. About halfway across, they heard what sounded like distant voices, men shouting, metal clashing, boots thudding on earth. When they stopped and listened, the noise faded away. They tried to ignore it and kept moving, but the mist grew thicker, swirling around their legs. That's when they saw the figures. At first they thought it was just the fog playing tricks, but as they got closer, the shapes became clearer, men in old uniforms, moving through the mist. Some carried rifles, others clutched their sides as if wounded. None of them seemed to notice my father or Sam. They just moved silently, reliving the same desperate struggle. My father said he felt rooted to the spot, unable to move or speak. The air was filled with a low, mournful sound, almost like the ground itself was whispering. He couldn't make out the words, but it felt like the field was trying to warn him. Sam finally snapped out of it and grabbed my father's arm, pulling him toward the edge of the field. As they ran, the whispers grew louder, almost pleading. My father glanced back and saw one of the ghostly soldiers turn and look directly at him. His face was pale and hollow, eyes filled with a sadness that seemed to reach right through the mist. They didn't stop running until they were back on the main road. The mist stayed behind, clinging to the battlefield like a curtain. When they got home, neither of them said a word about what they'd seen. But that night, my father dreamt of the field, of voices calling out for help, of hands reaching up from the earth. He never set foot in that field again.
After hearing my father's story about the old battlefield, I realized how many strange things lingered in our family's past. But that wasn't the only eerie tale he shared. There was another, about a clock. When my dad was older, living in the same old house, he found an antique clock in the attic. It was beautiful but strange, dark wood with intricate carvings, hands frozen at midnight. He brought it downstairs and set it up. That night, as the clock struck midnight, it ticked backwards. With each chime, the air shifted, like time was bending. At first it was just odd. The ticking was slow and deliberate, the chimes echoing through the silent house. Then, things changed. Shadows flickered at the edge of his vision, and the air grew thick with a strange scent. Objects moved on their own. Old photos appeared on walls, and sometimes he heard whispers from the clock, soft murmurs calling his name or warning him to stop. One night, the clock chimed 13 times instead of 12, each chime deeper than the last. After the last chime, the lights flickered, and a cold breeze swept through, carrying the faint scent of pipe smoke. He saw a shadowy figure, an old man in tattered clothes, standing silently in the corner, his eyes glowing faintly. The figure vanished quickly, but the backward ticking opened a door to the past, letting memories bleed into the present. He relived moments from his childhood, some twisted into darker scenes. One evening he found a letter. "Do not trust the clock. It brings back what should stay buried." Terrified, he tried to get rid of the clock, but it always returned, as if bound to the family. He hid the clock in the attic, covering it with old blankets, hoping to lock away the curse. But sometimes, late at night, he still hears the ticking, backwards, slow and steady, reminding him the past isn't gone. Weeks later, the clock ticked backwards again, this time with a faint lullaby his grandmother used to sing. The room grew colder, shadows stretched longer, photos on the walls changed, faces appeared, people unfamiliar but eerily familiar. One photo showed a man behind his grandmother, hollow-eyed and grim. That night he couldn't sleep. Whispers came from the attic. The next day the clock had moved to the living room, untouched. He realized the clock wasn't just an antique, it was a doorway between past and present, and whatever came through wasn't always friendly. Since then, he keeps the clock covered and wound down, but sometimes, when the house is quiet, you can hear the faint ticking, counting backwards, reminding us some things from the past never leave.